Hello, welcome to another video. Today we talk about King Marcus of Naraka. Let's begin. His life is very long. He's lived for well over 100 years, one of the longest reigning monarchs in history. His birth. Marcius Hermavac was born in 157 of the second era in the Hermavac family. I think I'm pronouncing that right. He grew up with the interest in the army. So this means that ever since he was young, he had an interest in becoming a soldier, a general. He was interested in combat. He had no father but a strict mother. His father died shortly after his birth in a rebellion that happened near the city of Nartha. Marcius Hermavac went to school when he was 6. Now this was very rare at the time. However, school isn't like how you would think it is. This was only meant for a basic education. There was no such thing as advanced education, and school was oftentimes left only to those with substantial wealth, though sometimes a poor person could have the chance of sending his or her child to basic school. When he was 13, his mother died, leaving him to be adopted by one of his uncles, Augusto, who was the king of Naraka at the time. And finally, probably the most important fact of his life, he used magic to extend his life, and he was skilled in the magical arts. When he was in his 40s and, well, he was already dying, he felt that his reign hadn't accomplished enough, so he started to dabble in the magical arts. This is how he reigned as one of the longest living monarchs in history. His education. Other than school, he was taught by one of Augusto's most royal Etovs, general, a man named Mavelin. Marcius was taught many tactics by Mavelian, I'll just call him Mavelian, and was and was taught also was taught how to fight. Marcius highly respected Mavelian and held him to high regard for his entire life. When Marcius became 22, he inherited the throne from Augusto, due to Augusto not having any children. So Augusto attempted to marry and have children several times, but he failed due to the fact that he was infertile. So by the laws, Marcius would eventually gain the throne. We'll call him Marsus for the rest of this video. Facts. Marsus's mother was influential in the politics of Naraka at the time. He changed his name to Marsus because it meant clearly I didn't put it there, but it means like legendary. It means like legendary warrior. The C in Marsus, as I've said before, is pronounced as an S and the U is pronounced as an O, meaning Marsus. Marsus wasn't supposed to inherit the throne. It was only due to the king's inability to produce an heir and the fact that at the time women couldn't inherit the throne. In fact, there were several more legitimate female heirs, but females weren't allowed to rule, so Marsus gained the throne. His early reign. For the first 20 years of his reign, he mainly focused on the conquests of his neighbors to the north, which were largely tribes. In this, he learned some pretty important battle tactics and also sort of learned how to fight in guerrilla warfare, though he would forget this by the time of his later life. He also heavily invested his wealth of the monarchy into the reconstruction of Nartha, which at this time was nearly destroyed. If you've seen part 1, you'll know that Nartha was destroyed well over 2 times. I said there was the first one, then the second one, but there were many sackings of Nartha during those times. And Nartha at this point was nearly destroyed. He rebuilt roads, funded the construction of new homes, and even relocated the capital to Nartha. At the time, it was a city called Uigak, which was much more north. He relocated the capital to Nartha and constructed a palace that would take over 7 years to complete. In his early reign, he was known as a great builder due to all of the infrastructure he did. In 201, the Algamorans declared war on Marsus after he refused to pay tribute to the Algamorans on the lands he conquered. The main reason being the Treaty of 182 of the Second Era, which on paper was a treaty in which Naraka would not expand unless it paid tribute. Now, Augusto did sign this treaty, but he never intended to enforce it. Marsus took advantage of this, and, well, Algamor. Marsus was able to defeat the Algamorans in several key battles, allowing him to gain a large amount of territory in the west, which is over here. So this area was part of Algamor. Marsus was able to come down there, defeat the Algamorans, and then take the land from them, and then he began his rapid expansion west. Throughout a period of around 40 years, he would colonize and, well, all of this. The light gray, by the way, means lands he had to abandon. You see, he managed to settle the city of Marthi, which is located somewhere around here. However, soon after the settlement, he was forced to abandon it. Despite this, the city still grew to be one of the most influential cities in the world, but that's for a different time. In 240, he was in the middle of a campaign in Marthia, in the area, to help solidify his rule. Now, there's a whole story about him actually being lost, kidnapped, had to fight for his freedom, and then, whilst in the middle of war with Algamor, he had to gather a huge army of essentially low trained soldiers, and he managed to still defeat the Algamorans. Now, to his personal life. In 200, while he was in his 40s, Marsus married a noble named Hendra. He would go on to have 15 kids with her, with only one, Yavsin, surviving until adulthood. Yavsin would survive for around 70 to 80-ish years before he died. Marsus also had feuds with his many uncles and aunts, causing him to order the execution of several prominent of his uncles. He had a lot of uncles, though not direct uncles, but, well, plenty of them. Augusto had a lot of brothers, and so did his father, so, yeah. In 243, Marsus's wife was killed while he was away on campaign, leaving him heartbroken. When he arrived home in 252, he married another woman named Yaimara, and had over 20 kids, with only 2 surviving out of the bunch. Marsus grew very depressed personally during these times, as he did have dreams of growing his family, specifically his lineage. So you see now that King Marcus has become depressed in his personal life. Dogs barking. Anyways, and this kind of has an effect on his life, especially later on. Further expansion. Further expansion would be his main focus, in which he would conquer numerous desert tribes in the Center Desert region. In 283, he was once again forced to fight another war with the Algamorans. In this war, he committed numerous massacres, numbering into the millions by the end of the war. He did declare that the Algamorans would be respected as a unique peoples and that he would not destroy their culture. Now, this was blatantly wrong, not just on his part, but on many future generations, as I'll talk about in a second. He also fought against another empire. I forgot their name. I should have took, but yeah, there's a video on it. He also plundered these guys mercilessly. He grew as Marsus grew older. He became much more brutal in the wars that he fought. After winning the war, he incorporated Algamore into Naraka proper. Algamore, from now on, unfortunately, would be subjugated for centuries under the vigorous oppression going through years of near constant genocide for the next 200 to 300 years. This is one of the darkest moments in Nekarthan history because, well, genocides are bad, and the Nekarthans killed well over millions of Algamorans in order to replace them. There was numerous other reasons, but it's not for this video to talk about that. In his final great conquest, he left in 298 for the Timberlands. He would go off and on trying to conquer lands in the Timberlands. However, the fighting was so different from what he had been used to that guerrilla warfare would force him to stop. He was nearly killed in 308 with an arrow, but managed to survive and return. Now this return, however, would probably be seen as a fatal mistake, as in 310 he was killed in the middle of a campaign into the Timberlands. So, anyways, in 311 he was declared dead, and by 313 he was buried in Nartha, thus bringing an end to one of the longest reigning monarchs in the history of, quite frankly, at least Ari, for sure. He ruled for over 130 years, expanding Naraka rapidly. He also was a great builder. He was also a great builder and reformer, with many of his reforms being focused in the code of law, mainly lifting certain restrictions on clothing laws and inheritance laws, and you get the point. One major important thing for Nekarthan history is that he actually allowed women to inherit the throne. Now, this might not seem that much at first, as women weren't really seen as rulers, but now by law they were allowed to inherit. However, this would become very important in the future, as this allowed for a much more another famous person to take the throne who would shift Nekarthan Empire's history for the rest of, well, its life. Thanks for watching. I do apologize for my stuttering quite a bit. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe, blah 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 blah. I'd like to see a comment by you guys saying how you thought of the video. Or if you also have any questions, please share them down there as well. Also, make sure to check my community posts quite frequently, as I'll do quizzes, fun facts, polls, that stuff. Anyways, that is it now. I hope I hope each and every one of you has a good day or good night.